What's going on?
I can feel the blood creeping up from the heathens. Got will, got fight, got pride, got reason. If they wanna go eat, then you know I'm gon' feed them. If you're coming for me, hope you're ready for a demon. I got eyes in the back of my head, I'm seeing. Take me for granted and you know I'm leaving. I'ma take what's mine with the webs I'm weaving. I could take this crowd from seeing to believing. Got a taste for blood and my tongue keeps bleeding. From the words I spit, so sharp, so freezing, so cold. Behold, frostbite they feeling. I could tear you apart or I could go heal them. Don't believe in fate, don't believe in ceilings. I just need a taste and my mind starts feeling. I don't pace myself, I grind on kneeling. Got lust for change, I just love the feeling. I ain't gonna give up. Got too little time, I'ma live up. Head down, push forward through the tough times. Cause anything worth doing is a tough climb. I ain't gonna give up. Got too little time, I'ma live up. Head down, push forward through the tough times. Cause anything worth doing is a tough cause climb. I'ma live life for the fight, yeah, I'm here to get it. I got drive, got sight, always have a vision. I go by at night, I be in my feelings. I'ma be fine, need time, and I'll soon be winning. I live life for the fight, yeah, I'm here to get it. I got drive, got sight, always have a vision. I go by at night, I be in my feelings. I'ma be fine, need time, and I'll soon be winning. I can feel the blood creeping up from the heathens. Got will, got fight, got pride, got reason. If they wanna go eat, then you know I'm gon' feed them. If you're coming for me, hope you're ready for a demon. I can feel the blood creeping up from the heathens. Got will, got fight, got pride, got reason. If you wanna go eat, then you know I'm gon' feed them. If you're coming for me, hope you're ready for a demon.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the show. It is a pleasure to have this gentleman join us tonight. I would speculate he has over 500,000 followers. I know for a fact he's got over 250,000 just on TikTok alone, but he's also on Instagram. And I cannot tell you how much of a pleasure it is to talk about his stories tonight. Please welcome Brandon Gayheart to the show. Brandon, thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you, guys. I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Love your New York accent, by the way. Whereabouts you from?
Well, if you can't tell, Eastern Kentucky. So, I always say if cornbread could talk, it would sound like me. So it's kind of a giveaway.
Yeah, we have one of your neighbors
state.
on last
Love
week, right, Ken? Because I think Grant Wilson lives in Kentucky also, correct?
He's down there now. I wasn't sure if it was down in Kentucky or South Carolina, but
yeah,
I could stand to be corrected on that. But welcome and hello to everyone down in the Bluegrass State. Good to have you, Brandon.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
yes.
All right.
And before we go forward, apologies for all the glare and such. We are doing the interview at a time where the sun is just glaring, and it'll be gone soon enough, and then you'll just get the glare from my head. So don't worry about that whatsoever. Pay no attention to me. But I'm going to be stepping off screen anyway in this first segment, as you all are pretty much used to. Ken's going to take over for now with Brendan, and then I'll pop back in just a little bit. So, Ken, Brendan, enjoy your interview. Take it away.
All right. Thanks, George. I appreciate it. All right, Brendan, let's get down to it now because you're a man after my own heart because I love to tell stories. I like to tell stories that are just weird and bizarre because sometimes, fiction is not quite as good as the actual fact.
Right.
So any opportunity I get, I want to get into the idea of Southern creatures, myths, legends, cryptids, and so forth, because I know you cover from A to Z on this. So I'm going to take my opportunity to get into this with you right now. So I want to start off right off the bat with you telling us to date what has been the most compelling Southern cryptid story that you've come across in your years of doing this.
Well, one of the videos that I done this past fall out of Smoky Mountains around Gatlinburg, Tennessee, was about a lady. She was home alone with her young daughter, and they were in the upstairs portion of the house just cleaning and going about their day when they heard something enter the house. And thinking it was another family member or a neighbor that maybe stopped by, they just kind of peeked down the stairs. And to their surprise, she said there was a Bigfoot. Now, if that wasn't creepy enough, moments later, they heard another set of footsteps, and they said a smaller child, I guess, juvenile Bigfoot, entered the house also. And they kind of just, they were frozen in fear, obviously, the mother and daughter, and just kind of froze. And after a few moments of just kind of looking around, she said they just turned and exited out the front door the way they came in. And that video, until recently, was my highest video as far as views go on TikTok, and the one that the source seemed really authentic. I mean, it was, she had me convinced. A lot of people, you know, first thing they say, why didn't you take a picture? Everybody has a cell phone nowadays. And that's a good question. But, you know, I think about it like this. You know, if you're really in your house minding your own business and two Bigfoot walk in, who knows what you're going to do? My first thought is not to grab my phone, but I understand the premise. A lot of people think so. But that's one that really stands out, that the source just seems so authentic. And that one really left an imprint with me.
Now, how long ago did this take place, Brandon?
It was I posted the video, I think, in September, and it was just, I think, a few weeks after the incident allegedly happened, which probably would have been August, September, early September, someone of 2024.
Yeah, is there any place that anybody could find this at this point? Has it been posted anywhere?
There have been other people cover it on TikTok, other cryptid people.
Yeah.
But I heard it. The source that gave it to me, I didn't get it right from the source, but the source that gave it to me is one that I trust. Right. And they gave me their word that they felt like this lady was 100% authentic, telling the truth. She wasn't looking to get famous or rich or notoriety. She just was scared, honestly, and told some people. But I was supposed to, that person was supposed to maybe get me in touch with that lady, but that hasn't came through yet. So I'm not sure if that's going to happen or not.
Well, I think if she was seeking money for this, it would be all over the place, and everybody had already heard of this right now. So I have to do a little bit of digging because I'd like to see that myself. In terms of cryptids, familiar with a lot down south, from the lizard monster to the snallygaster to the raven mocker to a lot of these things. So do you think that the South generally has more cryptid activity than most parts of the country, or is it just maybe they have more legends than the rest of the country? But let's stick with what we might call interesting, credible type of sightings. Is it predominant down there in your mind?
Well, I think Appalachia in general seems to be like a hotbed for cryptid activity, like you said. The Appalachian mountain range is very old. It's very big. It's a vast, dense forest. Stretches almost across the whole eastern seaboard of the U.S. And in my research, which I'm about 3 hours away, the Smoky Mountains seem to be one of the biggest hot spots of all for cryptid activity. All kinds of paranormal activity, really.
Yeah. Do you think a lot of it has to do with things like climate and geography? Because, the Pacific Northwest comes to mind, but Everglades, swamps, mountain ranges, the Appalachians, they seem like a place where if creature didn't want to be discovered, then that's pretty much where you want to go.
Right. And national parks seem to be a hot spot that's protected land. So if these creatures do exist, they do have some protection, whereas you don't have hunters, and I'm sure you have poachers everywhere, but for the most part, you don't have hunters like you do on public land and
Yeah.
people in and out. So, that's kind of a theory. But, where I take it a step further, when it comes to the paranormal on, let's say, ghosts, I have a theory on that. Is if cryptids are real, Bigfoot, all those, what are they?
Mhm.
So are they biological? Are they flesh and blood? Or are they something else? That's where my question isn't are they real? It's what are they? That intrigues me more because I'm convinced they are real. But the better question to me is what are they?
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of theories on that. They're biological, they're
Right.
spiritual, they're interdimensional. A lot of people say that UFO activity and creatures that we would refer to as Bigfoot tend to coincide with each other a lot. And we've had cases like that in Pennsylvania and West Virginia and a lot of other places where that kind of activity seems to precede a sighting of a biological entity, hairy, 6 to 8 feet tall, checks all the
Right.
boxes off.
Right. Yeah. And what really got me interested in the cryptid side of things is my best friend, Zach Hall. He used to work on the show Expedition Bigfoot. If you've watched that, I'm not sure.
I'm very
And
familiar.
he was the cameraman for Russell Acord. And I've since got to know the cast, and Russell Acord is a good friend of mine now. We've got to investigate some. Good friend of mine, and they kind of got me on board with the cryptid side of things, the Bigfoot, and the stories those guys have told me, and I know they are being 110% legit. They've encountered some crazy things, and so yeah, I mean they've told me some stories.
Yeah. If you're going back into this now, and I'm sure this is like this in a lot of places, how much of this, as you look into it, goes back to First Nation, indigenous peoples here who, through oral tradition or written tradition, however it is,
Right,
totems and so forth, these things have been passed down much longer than, we've had TV shows.
right, exactly. Yeah, definitely. I mean, like you said, I think the term Bigfoot, for instance, just come about in the last few decades. It's fairly new, but indigenous people, have reported these Bigfoot type creatures for hundreds of years.
Yeah.
So and I'm a firm believer of where there's smoke, there's fire. Now, do I believe every encounter is legit? No, I think a lot of it is misidentification, or people get scared and they see what they want to see.
Right.
But I do believe that when you have that many people over a vast amount of time, there's something to it, something somewhere. Some of it is legit. Um,
Oh, I agree with that now, because nothing. I mean, if you do this long enough, you can know 5 minutes into a conversation if somebody is just pulling your leg or, but a lot of these things have to be at least looked into. I don't ever want to get that, disconnected from it that we just say, I'm not going to bother,
right.
So, yeah. Now, have you had opportunities to go out and investigate some of these reports for yourself?
I have some on the cryptid side. I've done a lot of paranormal investigations as far as like hauntings, that type of activity. Like I said, my friend Zach Hall, he's the one who really got me in on the cryptid side of things in the last few years. He and I have investigated some, and again, like Russell Acord from Expedition Bigfoot. And actually, right where I live, there are some pretty reputable people who have had sightings over the last 40, 50 years in this area that I have kind of looked into a little bit also.
Yeah.
No concrete evidence, but I have experienced a few things that I can't explain. Now, that doesn't mean it's paranormal, but I can't explain it. I'm pretty familiar with the mountains, the animals, the sounds, the things you hear. I mean, it's easy to scare yourself if you're not familiar with the area, but I have also heard some things that I would feel better if I could explain it, but I can't.
Yeah.
And I've worked in law enforcement for nearly 25 years, and I've encountered some pretty scary stuff. And so it takes a little bit to get me jolted, but it does happen. I'm not going to lie.
No, you wouldn't be less than human if it didn't. You
Right.
know, that's your fight or flight response right there. Well, I know
Exactly.
growing up in the country, we've done things outdoors, and a fox can sound like the most terrifying thing in the world, you know.
Absolutely.
But I think we all understand that sometimes people aren't trying to hoax anything; they just misidentify things,
Right. Exactly.
just as we as humans do. Let me ask you this now, from a general overview of this: what do you think the most compelling piece of evidence, physical evidence we have of the existence of, maybe not just Bigfoot, because we can talk Patterson Gimlin if you want,
Right.
but in general, the most compelling piece of evidence that somebody got out there? I know people like Jeff Meldrum have nothing but footprints and out
Right.
in Idaho and all the rest of that. But is there something that kind of stands out to you that kind of motivates you, like, okay, somebody found something, let's keep going on this?
Right. Well, I think as an investigator, paranormal or otherwise, you want that tangible evidence, something that you can physically hold, see, okay, this is what this is 100%. Have I seen that? No. And so I think that's why it's truly important when you can rely on people that are trustworthy. Like, do I believe every time I hear a story of a haunting or a ghost or a Bigfoot? No. That doesn't mean I believe those people are lying, but it's going to take more than just someone saying, "Hey, yeah, I seen Bigfoot," for me to jump up and down. As far as tangible evidence, I have not seen it. Now, back to what you said, the Patterson Gimlin film. Mr. Russell Acord, as I mentioned, he is a very, very close friend of Bob Gimlin.
Mm-hmm.
I have not met Bob, but Russell spends lots of time
Bob,
with him.
Bob is still with us, Brendan?
He is. He's, I think, maybe in his 90s now. He's getting older, but Russell visits him often, and he will bring some stuff from Bob's collection, like to his conventions that he goes to, and so he does a lot of stuff for Bob. And Russell has personally told me that he and Bob are close enough, and that to this day he swears that is a legit film. When they recorded that, it was not, anyone in a costume. And so that's why, I know that isn't tangible evidence, but you know, how much, you got to believe people, or, the people you do believe, you have to just take their word for what they're saying, and, make your own conclusions from that.
Well, there's one of two things I come down on, and I tend to lean more that it's a legitimate piece of footage. That's just me.
Right. I
But
agree.
it's either one of two things here. It's either somebody in a suit, or
Mhm.
that's a female Bigfoot, because we're talking 1967, and we don't, we're not talking about Photoshop and digital editing and all the rest of that for
Right.
at least 15 years, 12, 15 years yet to come.
Right. That's true. And, and even on one of the episodes of Expedition Bigfoot, they brought in experts to analyze the costume, people who are like prominent in that profession today, who make Hollywood special effects, suits, costumes, and they, analyzed the bend in the legs and the knees. And they said at that time that quality of a costume wasn't even in existence.
Right.
Like, that was decades ahead of its time if it was some kind of costume or whatever. And so, you just got to take evidence and put it all together at the end of the day. Okay, does it lean toward this is authentic or is this a hoax? And then, like, in my opinion, I have seen enough to make me believe it's legit
Mhm.
than a hoax. That maybe that'll change somewhere down the road, but as of right now, I think it's legit.
Yeah, I come down on that, and without really getting into it, I have seen forensic type of investigations of that footage. And
Right.
I'm not the only one. I mean, if you want to find them, they're out there with some very credible, very smart, a lot smarter than I am, take these
Right.
things apart the way they do, even with 3D mapping.
Right.
It's difficult because the area looks nothing like it did
Right.
at one point. So I guess that leads us to, you got to tell us about the the state cryptid of Kentucky, the Poplick monster.
That's an interesting one. Excuse me. Um, that's the Poplick monster is up around Louisville, Kentucky, um, and also known as the Goat Man. Goat Man's a bridge is another term they use, but he is said to be on a train trestle, and he will lure people upon this trestle to. In a lot of cases, people will walk out and they have nowhere to go once they get out on this huge trestle, just a huge drop off on either side. And then, a train comes and they meet their end that way, or allegedly the Goat Man or Poplick Monster will do whatever he's going to do to them. I have not had the opportunity to investigate that, but that's definitely on my list because there's some, you have Waverly Hills, right in the same area. So I'd like to knock out a few of those on one trip if possible someday.
Yeah. You can apply, thing I want to ask is, you can apply this probably to whether you're talking about ghosts or cryptids, is how many of these stories do you think are parables or cautionary tales where, don't go in the basement because the monster's going to get you. Don't go in the woods because the monster's going to get you. And you pass this down to children to put the fear of God in them so they're not wandering off and fall into a swamp or fall off something in the basement. So do these serve a purpose as a sort of guardrail? And are there instances where these stories are told and then they just explode?
Exactly.
Because we all know at the heart of a legend, usually there's a grain of truth in there somewhere. We may have to dig for it. But how much of this do you think in our folklore is just meant to warn people off from danger?
That's a good question. I mean, I think there is probably a considerable amount that is just to keep children in check, to keep people out of this area. There's a lot of theories around Appalachia, back in the olden days, moonshiners, they would tell stories to keep people out of the hills so they wouldn't bother their moonshine still. And so, I mean, I'm sure that does happen. But like you said, I mean, somewhere, I think in a lot of these cases, even if it's a grain of salt, there's some truth somewhere.
Yeah.
What it is exactly, I don't know. But there's just when too many different people encounter similar type things, usually where there's smoke, there's fire. Again, what is it? I don't know, but there's something. And it's slipping my mind right now. My mind just went completely blank, but there's actually a term, at least in the case of hauntings, that, for instance, if I made up a rumor that this abandoned house was haunted by a one-eyed, one-horned, flying purple people eater, that if enough people came to this location looking for that creature, I guess it's their combined consciousness that this creature would come into light.
You're talking about a tulpa.
Well, yeah, that is one term for it.
A conscious thought that actually takes physical form.
Right. Yeah, and there's also another term for it. I believe it starts with a G, but again, my mind went blank.
Mm.
But, and that's where I get to in hauntings. Like, my belief is with hauntings, ghosts in general, and maybe even to the cryptid side of things, is I believe these things are demonic in nature. That's my belief. As a Christian, I've questioned that for a long time before I kind of made that conclusion. But in my experience of 25 years, that's my belief. And I believe will try to manipulate people, manifest as pretty much anything they want to. So that's why, if I say this house is haunted by this type of spirit, a lady in white, or a man with a top hat, or whatever it is, people will keep going looking for that creature, and these creatures thrive on people's energies. They want people to come. That's what they want. So they will appear and give just enough to keep people coming back. That's why you don't ever get everybody always says the video of Bigfoot's blurry or the ghost picture is always blurry. I think you'll get just enough to question. Yeah, it's blurry, but maybe.
Yeah. Well, not the first guest we've had that has, taken that mindset. I am of a different mindset, but that's fine.
Right.
So
Yeah,
essentially,
absolutely.
Essentially what you say is that these beings, deities, whatever you want to call them, energies, will come in a benign form in order to gain trust.
Right.
To what end, though, Brandon? What is ultimately, is it manipulation or is it something more than that?
Well, I think it's when it comes to demonic entities, I don't think it happens as often as what people think it does, but I believe in demonic possession. But more than possession, I believe in oppression. People become oppressed. These things will kind of are like a leech. They will just grab on to people and make their life miserable. Anything to distract them from God. And I think that's why people say they see their loved ones. I believe what the Bible teaches: when a person passes away, they go to God for judgment. The Bible says the dead know nothing. I believe once we pass on, we're done with this world. But the Bible also teaches us that these demonic entities are roaming around looking for who they can and will devour. So if they have to appear as a loved one or a friend just to get people's trust, you on these ghost hunting shows, you'll see people use my energy, manifest. I want you here to protect me. That's what they want, an invitation. And you're not going to invite something with a pitchfork and horns into your house, but if they look like a familiar person or someone that you knew, you're going to be welcoming. So yeah, they're manipulation. They're trying to manipulate people ultimately, and to what end? I guess it just depends on the situation. Maybe, I don't know.
I think it's generally accepted that these entities will prey on vulnerability.
Absolutely.
The weakest among us. So,
Absolutely.
Who in your mind is the most vulnerable? So, quick story. In my years of doing this, when people have said, I think I have something evil or demonic in the house, I don't think I've ever encountered anything demonic, and, good for me.
Right.
Good for me. Despite what you see on TV and the internet, everybody's getting possessed. Everybody's, which is it's embarrassing sometimes. But
Right.
I've had people where I've gone into homes where it's just borderline squalor, hoarders, where I've said, listen, just get some order, let some light in here, clean up your house.
Exactly.
And it's hard to do without being insulting. I'm not trying to disrespect anybody. I'm just giving a suggestion. But who do you think among us are the most vulnerable, and why is such a malevolent entity drawn to particular people?
Well, in my experience, people who are the most vulnerable are those who are hurting the most. People like who have maybe experienced a loss of a loved one. People who are maybe under the influence of addiction to drugs or alcohol, and they're what in my personal opinion is these demonic entities, what they want is not to believe that that they're not real. They just don't want you to think that they don't want you to believe a demon's in your house. They want you to think it's a spirit. So if it's someone affected by drugs or alcohol, they're weak. Their soul's weak. They may not even realize it, but they're at a very low point in their life. People, whether it's drugs, alcohols, the loss of a loved one, whatever it is, it's different for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
For me personally, I've been very fortunate, and I've been a Christian now for the better part of 20 years. But when my mom passed away about a year and a half ago, that was the hardest thing I ever went through. Now, that doesn't say that I didn't question God, why did this happen? But my faith grew stronger in God. But at the same time, I could feel dark things trying to get me to turn from God. If God loved you, why does He make you do this? Why'd He take your mom? If God's real and God is love, why did He allow this to happen? You're a good person. Why did this happen? So anybody who's down on their luck, whatever the situation is, they're like parasites. They will latch on at any opportunity.
Yeah. Well, it's a matter of when there's a void in your life, something is going to fill that void.
Exactly.
Now
Exactly.
choice is yours, what fills it. But if there's an empty spot there for rent, you don't know who's going to come along and who's going to take those type of things. So
Exactly.
well,
Now, when it comes to cryptids, I'm sorry, I just want to touch on this. Now, I do believe that there is a chance that, like Bigfoot or Snallygaster or whatever, maybe those are legitimate biological creatures. They're very intelligent. They're, just super intelligent, and they can stay hidden. That's a possibility.
yeah.
I'm not saying they're all demonic, or maybe you do have ones that are real. There are legitimate biological Bigfoots and lizard man, whatever. But at the same time, you will have these demonic entities that will also maybe manifest as a Bigfoot. And that's when you hear about the interdimensional people say, they walk through a wall or just vanished in thin air. That's the ones that would make me question, okay, if Bigfoot's real, if he's flesh and blood, he can't walk through a wall or through a tree or through a mountain. But if he can vanish into thin air, what is he? So
Right. Well, you got to look at it this way too. If a sentient being, someone who's operating more, not as much on instinct, but on intelligence as well. If you look at some of the most prolific serial killers in our era, whether it's Bundy, whether it's Berkowitz, whoever it was, they managed to do what they did in huge metropolitan areas.
right.
Milwaukee, Los Angeles, California, heavily populated cities that they lived in, and somehow they were able to avoid detection just by assimilating into their surroundings, into their environment, and managing to not draw attention to themselves in order to pull this off. So if we apply that to these creatures that we just can't find, we can't bring one of them to justice, is it unreasonable to think that same type of instinct or whatever it is can lead anything to just go off the grid?
Right, exactly. And that's very good. And that's interesting you bring that up. My brother is actually a psychologist, a doctor, and he just started a TikTok account in the last couple of weeks. And his first video was about Ted Bundy. And the opening statement to his TikTok was, I can't remember word for word, but if you had met Ted Bundy, you would have liked him. He's somebody you would have wanted to be around. He's very charismatic. He was one of those people you were drawn to. No one would guess that he was a serial killer, and he was just, he probably could have held an office. He was more like a politician,
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that makes sense. But I mean, these things obviously, like Bigfoot, if they are real, maybe they live, subterranean, underground, in caves. They're highly intelligent. Who knows? So there's just a lot of questions we don't have answers to, but hopefully someday we will.
Yeah. Well, the term is hide in plain sight, right?
Exactly.
Now, a lot of that time when we're talking about those things, we get this in before we bring George in, is in terms of hiding in plain sight, for most humans, it's a learned behavior, right? If you're going off to war, you're talking about camouflage. If you're hunting, you're talking about camouflage. And these are learned behaviors.
Right.
In these creatures, it's instinctive.
Right.
It's almost bred into them that, yeah, you want to kind of stay away from those people. And I know that we've all heard stories of the woman who, used to talk to Bigfoot on her back door, and it's like,
Yeah.
hey, okay, it's your story.
Right. Right.
Whatever, they have a
Right.
language. But it's from, you talk about juveniles and of any species, it's almost inbred in them. It's like, how do some dogs can be shepherds,
Right.
border
Right.
collies and things like, it's in them.
Right.
It's a
Exactly. Yeah.
it's a lineage.
Right. And that kind of goes back to the theory about these national parks. Maybe they're not all, originate in the national parks, but they learned, okay, this is protected land. If we migrate to these parks, we do have a sense of protection that we don't have right here in, on public land. So if they are that highly intelligent, sentient beings, so I think it's likely they could rationalize to think, okay, this is much safer, thousands and thousands and thousands of acres that probably have some of it been untouched for hundreds of years. That seems like a pretty good place to go for a Bigfoot or anything else, cryptid related or paranormal, maybe.
Yeah, wherever the food is, wherever the water is, because you're going to need that to survive one way or the other. So, all right, Brandon, I thank you for that little chat we had about cryptids in general. I'm going to be back a little bit later before you sign off, but I know there's a whole nother facet of this stuff we're going to get into, and we're going to bring George in to do that right now. So, see you soon, buddy.
All right,
Thank you, Ken. We'll have Ken back when I put up the evidence that you sent us also, because I love Ken's reactions. he is incredible as far as the field is concerned. He loves to scrutinize a lot of things, and the oohs and the wows that come from Ken lend a lot of credibility. But Supernatural Sleuth, Brandon Gayheart, I wanted to go down that road, sir, of transitioning from just somebody who is curious in the paranormal to getting onto social media and killing it. Now, bragging rights aside, we have our own TikTok page, and we are dwarfed by your numbers. We got about 6,000 followers, and then I look at this and go, what are we doing wrong here? How did you decide that this was the direction that you were going to go, and figured out that there's a need for it? There's an appetite for it out there.
Well, it's an interesting question. I have always been interested in the paranormal. I have loved since a kid. I think maybe it started, my family ran a funeral home when I was a kid, and I don't know if that's where the spark kind of ignited or what, but
yeah,
as long as I can remember, I've loved scary movies, anything horror related, ghosts, vampires, Bigfoot. And but when it comes to the TikTok side of thing, I give credit to my friend Zach Hall, who I mentioned a moment ago with Ken. Zach is one of the most unique people. We worked in law enforcement together. He was a police officer for a while, but he went on to work in shows like Expedition Bigfoot, Finding Bigfoot, Dirty Jobs with Micro, Deadliest Catch. Yeah, all kinds of shows. And he's currently on Mr. Beast's production team on Mr. Beast channel.
That's
he's
blowing
like
up.
Yeah. So, but he pushed me. I always wanted to do something, but I was not the guy who wanted to be in front of the camera. I don't like the way I look, don't like the way I sound, but Zach pushed me. He pushed me. He's like, look, you need to do this. I needed an outlet. I felt kind of stagnant for a while, and He's like, dude, just try it. He said, you know, the worst thing can happen is you fail. And I'm the type of person that it's hard for me to commit to something, but once I do, I'm head first.
Right.
I obsess over it. And so when I started TikTok, I researched, I watched YouTube videos, I read everything I could, trying to learn out how do you get successful on TikTok. And to be honest, I mean, I'm still a very small fish in a very big pond in the TikTok world, but I owe my success in part to listening to people who done it before me, and it worked.
Well,
So,
keep in mind again, Brendan, that there are TV shows out there that don't have this bigger following.
yeah. Well, you know, some people, I don't know if it's good or bad, but some people tell me they binge watch my TikToks as they go to bed. My voice puts them to sleep. So I don't know if that's good or bad, but I'll take it. It's a view. So,
That's how it works.
but, you know, either way, when I started, I didn't really know what angle I was going to go. I thought I would just go, you know, on my paranormal investigations and show my evidence. But I learned rather quickly I don't have that much evidence. You don't always catch stuff on a paranormal investigation. So that well ran dry pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And before I knew it, I had people reaching out to me, hey, you know, I have a picture. Will you share it? I don't want to be on camera. Will you share it? I have a story. Will you tell my story? And so that's just what I started doing. I shared other people's evidence too. And before I knew it, in about 3.5 months, I became monetized. It all just kind of happened overnight, and I'm very blessed.
You got to find yourself sort of, I know you said blessed, but sort of more confident in your skill and ability now to get that kind of a following. Shows that there is something that that audience of yours wants. And I want you to kind of go through the process for us also. I know this is not as mysterious as talking the topic of the paranormal, but right
Right,
now, the paranormal and media go hand in hand. They've been going hand in hand
right,
for almost 20 years. But
right,
now, with the social media aspect of it just blowing up, people are searching for things that they can either relate to or things that they want to be scared by.
right,
But a good story is a good story, regardless of it.
right.
But lay it out how you decided to do the videos in the form and the way that you do, because you're pretty much Vincent Price. You're telling the story of the
Right.
events that are occurring there. Where was that mindset coming from?
To be honest, I knew absolutely nothing about TikTok when I started TikTok. I knew nothing. So again, I'll credit my friend Zach and my wife. I have to give her and my daughters credit. They're very supportive. You know, I've had a lot of crazy ideas in the past. They always support me, so I'll give credit to them. But my friend Zach, when he talked me into it on day, I think it was April 26th of 2022, he said he was in my office at work. I said, I have no idea how to post a video on TikTok. I know nothing. And he said, well, do this right here. And he sat down and showed me, here's what you do. You know, I held my phone in front of me and told a story. I didn't know it didn't. I go back and look at those first videos and I cringe. Not that I'm any better now, but, you know, my editing's got a little better, if nothing else. But I knew nothing. I knew how to point the camera and hit record. And that was what I knew. Then I became invested. It goes back to when I do commit, I go all in, day and night. I research. I watch YouTube videos. If you how to make a viral TikTok, how to grow, how to get followers, and I just started implementing those techniques. Posting times, that's huge on TikTok. When you post and finding out what topic that week is going to do good. You know, you kind of got to do your research. But, you know, it just kind of, I mean, I spend a lot of hours research. You know, that's listening. You have to be teachable. You know, you have to listen to people who have done it, and that's what I did. And so far, it's paid off for me. You know, honestly, it's just digging in, trying different things, trial and error, and listen to the people who done it before me.
I chuckled a moment there because when he comes back on with us, Ken has his show on this channel too, called Extremely Strange. And Brendan, we had this conversation maybe 2, 3 months ago where he said, "Yeah, I went back to my original videos, and I got to go back in there and change it out and fix things up."
Right,
And it's a process without question.
right.
Um, but it's one of those things that I wonder, because again, our numbers dwarf compared to yours. But I wonder, from a content creator's perspective, is there an evolution aspect of it? In other words, do you feel at one point in time you hit a peak and you want to change direction? And if you do, how do you decide which way to go on it? Again, is it just the research of what they're looking for in the algorithm?
Well, I mean, you do have to adapt. Like I said, when I went into it, I honestly had no. I knew I wanted to tell. I wanted to talk about the paranormal. I wanted to showcase evidence and experience I personally had. And like I said, that well ran dry rather quickly because to come find out, I didn't have that much evidence as much as I thought I did. And so,
Right.
okay, now what am I going to do? So I started in my videos asking people if you have any kind of paranormal story, picture, or video you have, send it to my email address. Lo and behold, people started sending it to my email address. So, I started telling their stories, and it was slow. They didn't just blow up overnight, but I just continued to do it. I continued to get more stories, more pictures, and it honestly just blew up kind of out of nowhere. You have to have 10,000 followers and I think 100,000 video views in a 30-day window in order to be monetized on TikTok for the creator rewards program.
Right.
And like I said, I got that in about 3.5 months. But what I have discovered, because I've had other people approach me who want to get in TikTok, what do I need to do? And the most important thing that I tell them, I said, you'll find your calling, you'll find your niche, as long as you stay consistent. But most people, when they start posting TikToks, you live in that world of about 200 views, give or take. You have to push through that. Everybody goes through it. You have to do it in vain almost. Go through it every day, post 2 or 3 times a day. Then so TikTok rewards consistency. If you stay consistent through the hard times, they'll start gradually pushing your content out there.
Hmm.
So, I tell people, if for nothing else, be consistent and post stuff. That's the most important thing you can do.
When you've gotten some of these emails, have there been times where they put the story down, pen to paper, so to speak, and then they sent you their evidence?
Mhm.
Has there been those particular uh, correspondence that you looked at and went, "This is outrageous. Let me check a little bit more," and then found it to be true?
Yeah, that actually happens pretty more often than you would think, really. Now, I do get some messages, emails that they're just way out there.
Yeah.
And people send me pictures. They will say I have the best picture of a ghost ever captured, and I'm like, yeah,
Orbs.
great, send it to me. And they send it to me, and I see absolutely nothing,
Yeah.
absolutely nothing. And I don't try to insult or be rude, but I just thank them for their time. But in order for me to share a picture, I at least have to be able to see what I'm sharing. I have to. This person says they see a ghost in their closet. Here's what they see. Tell me, do you see it? Now, people ask me all the time, do I necessarily believe every story I tell or every picture I share? You know, I'm not
That's
saying
hard.
that I do or don't,
Yeah.
but I leave it for everybody else to decide. Don't take my word for it. Look at it. Tell me what you think.
Well, that's the entire paranormal world. This is what we have to contend with. Even the evidence that we have put out, you're going to have the naysayers. And some of them do it just out of spite. I don't know if it's
Right.
just jealousy, or they just need to be the antagonist. But yeah, you can't make them happy no matter what you do, putting out there.
Yeah.
But I
Right.
find a lot of the times, again, that when we go down that road of trusting in our fellow man or woman in giving us the
Mhm.
content in good faith, they're pretty good
Right.
about it. I've found
Yeah.
it's just that rare
Well,
occasion, and there may be a misconception on their part, the lack of education in the field on their part, but they're not trying to pull the wool over our eyes. Do you
yeah,
feel the same way?
yeah, 100, yeah, 100%. I don't believe these people have malicious intent. They just, like you said, misidentifying what they're seeing or wanting to see something so bad. They're, going a little further with it than I would. And no, I don't think they have malicious intent or trying to manipulate. I think it's just, they're most people are very proud of the evidence they capture. And so when
Yes.
they send it to me and I don't see it, I'm very thoughtful. I will thank them for their time and, say that's amazing. Thanks for sharing that with me. And, sometimes they'll ask me, hey, I really want your honest opinion. What do you think? Is this really what I'm seeing or do you see something else? And in those cases, I'll be honest. I'll say, look, I don't know. I don't see what you're seeing, but, that's just me. Maybe you're seeing something I don't. But I appreciate every person who reaches out to me, whether I share their evidence or their stories or not. Because, like you said, I think in most cases they are being genuine, and I appreciate their time and effort to share their stories with me. So,
Right.
and some of them though are bone chilling. I will say um, sometimes I'll glance at a picture and I don't see anything, then I'll take a second look and I'm like, oh wow, that just blows my mind. It's like, yeah, I have to share this. So yeah, I mean, it's you can tell the trolls. I mean, there's always going to be trolls. The ones that try to,
Oh yeah.
you know, you know what a troll is. So, but I think the good outweighs the bad.
I think so too. I think in general people are pretty candid about what's going on, and a lot of them again seeking for help and don't really know who to trust. And that's an important part,
Right.
huge part of our field because there are
Exactly.
so many that are untrustworthy that
Right.
are out there in the field, and they're just going to exacerbate a situation, especially in residential cases. That's a
Right.
terrifying thought. I want to get to these photos and have Ken join us here in just a few minutes before we get to the top of the hour. I'm going to go down a road, an avenue that none of us
Sure.
should ever do, but we tend to on this show, and that's politics.
Right.
Well, politics of the field for the most part. And
Right.
when we find ourselves sharing, such as what you do now on multiple platforms, what we do on multiple platforms, um, I wonder a lot of the times in the field if there is a bit of pushback from others. I don't know if it's competitive. I don't know if
Right.
they just have this different tier level thought mentality.
Yeah.
Mine's better than yours, all of that stupid competitiveness.
Yeah.
But it sounds like you've got a good core group of people around you, which is wonderful. But does that adversary, kind of a group kind of ever pop up
Yeah.
for you or for the people you know around you?
Yeah, I know exactly what you're saying. I am blessed to have the people around me that I do. I have a lot of loyal followers, supporters, and people who support me and what I do. But yeah, you're right. There is a competitiveness in the at least the TikTok side of the paranormal niche.
Sure.
Some people I reach out to. I can remember when I first started TikTok with probably no more than a few hundred followers. I would sometimes message these bigger groups or individuals, and usually they never respond.
I hear that.
So that's something I try to keep in mind now that I have a bigger following. I try to respond to everybody that messages me. Sometimes I overlook them because I will literally get hundreds of messages and emails, and it's hard to comment on all of them. I know I miss some, but I I do the best that I can, and I try to
Right.
let my followers know that. Um, but I will say, as I have grown, my followers have grown. Bigger people in this world now do talk back to me.
Sure.
Nothing huge, but I will give props to. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Project Fear. They're on YouTube.
Oh
They
God,
used to be
yes.
Destination Fear. They follow me on TikTok. I've talked to them some. We follow each other, and hope to eventually maybe do some kind of collaboration with them. Nothing set in stone. I don't know for certain, but I can say those guys are super nice. What I have talked to them, and their social media person, they're very friendly people.
Yeah, I've sent some messages out to Project Fear, and normally I just get back LOL. I don't know what that means. I have no idea. Lots of love I'm expecting, but
Laugh
with
out loud.
6,000 followers, they're like, not even going to touch you. Not even going to touch you. Final
Right.
question before we bring Ken back is in regards to your religion, Christianity. Are
Mhm.
there conflicts within your group, within the people that you surround yourself with who are fellow Christians, and what it is that you do? Because there is that instability with regards
Right.
to that you shouldn't be messing with it whatsoever. How
Exactly.
does that factor in for you?
Well, I'll be completely honest with you. That's something I struggled with when I began this
Oh, sure.
TikTok, and then it really took a turn because it was just shortly after became monetized and my account took off when my mom passed away. Which at the
Right.
time, like I said, I was a Christian, but that going through that brought me back closer to God than I'd ever been in my life. And then I was really on the fence. Like, now what do I do? Because I feel like I'm led here. This is from God. But at the same time, I talked to pastor friends of mine who were pastors, and they said what I already knew. You have to be careful because, as a Christian, you know what this is. There are certain things you don't do. And so, honestly, when my mom passed in September of 2022, my TikTok lay dormant almost until March of about this time last year. And I honestly was on the fence. I almost deleted my account. And then I just stayed in prayer about it. And then it's just like one day God revealed it to me. I brought you here for a reason. I got a job for you to do. And I feel like that job is, I'm very convinced that these demonic entities are manipulating people. They are wreaking havoc in some people's lives because they are inviting these things in, thinking this is a past loved one or things of that nature. So it almost feels like a calling to me now. And so, but I figured when I picked my TikTok account back up this time last year, I would have to start back from scratch. But it instantly blew up. When I done what I felt like God had called me to do and shared the faith and telling the truth about these entities, that's when my TikTok blew up. It honestly, in that moment, it blew up. And so, yeah, and that's something I do tell people. Like, I do paranormal investigations, but there are certain lines I do not cross because I know, for me at least, when I go into a haunted location and I'm making contact with the spirit, I know it's not a human spirit. I know what it is. So there's certain lines I do not cross. Definitely.
Kind of makes you a messenger of a sort. So that's the
Right.
important part.
Right.
Spreading the word, letting people know, that are out there saying things, as you said earlier, such as "use my energy," is a dangerous
Right.
road to go down. And
Right.
oppression certainly is something that is chronic, unfortunately, right now, going on
Yes.
in and outside of the field. Um,
Right.
Welcome to Live with Cody and Satori, the paranormal couple. The show will be starting shortly. Please like, subscribe, and comment. Now please welcome the paranormal couple, Cody and Satori.
In cemeteries across the world, some headstones hold more than just names and dates. They preserve cherished family recipes, etched in stone as a lasting tribute. These recipes are more than instructions for a dish. They are connections to loved ones, memories of shared meals, and a way to keep traditions alive. In this series, we'll be honoring these unique culinary legacies by bringing these recipes to life. With respect and gratitude, we'll cook the dishes exactly as they were meant to be enjoyed.
It's time, I think, Brendan, to bring Ken back up on screen with us because we're going to get to some of these amazing shots that you have. Welcome back, Ken.
Hello, sirs.
Welcome.
And
I am. I'm looking forward to this. Let me just
yeah,
arrange
absolutely.
my camera
And
here.
some of them, like I said, they will make Ken salivate because it's one of his favorite side hobbies
Great,
here. So,
great.
and others he'll scrutinize because again, some of this stuff is so unbelievably incredible that it strains credulity. It makes you question it. So definitely enjoy the fact that you're sharing this with us. Now, what I have done also, Brendan, is I've taken your pictures and also have done zoom ins to the areas
Okay.
that are purported to be paranormal in nature. So I just put them right down an alphabetized grouping of it in no particular order, but
Good.
let's go ahead and go down. And those stories that you remember, please share. And
Okay.
those that you don't, we'll just take a look at it all together. How's that sound?
Sounds great.
All right. Here's picture number one. Tell us
Okay, so
about this.
this one was just sent to me, I think, earlier this week, I believe, and it comes
Really?
out of Eastern Kentucky. Yeah, I'm not sure what county, but probably rather close to where I live. And the story, the gentleman who sent it to me, I think this is a security camera. His father-in-law had just passed away, I think, a couple days prior to this. But his father-in-law was in a wheelchair when he passed, and he was reviewing his security footage. And if you'll notice on the kind of the right side of the screen toward the bottom, it looks like someone's sitting there in a wheelchair. And he had no explanation what this could be because there was nothing sitting outside that would resemble this. But he said it looked just like how his father-in-law did when he was alive in his wheelchair. So yeah, that's probably the newest one that I got. I thought that one was rather interesting.
Now, I don't know how much you know about this, but I don't know if it's pixelization or just the age of the camera, but did he take that through a screen door?
I don't know. That's something I'm not sure. It does look though. It looks like a screen
Yeah.
door or a screen
Okay.
window. I'm not sure, but he was kind of bothered by this because he's like my father, and this all happened recently, and he's like I caught this. It looks like my father-in-law sitting there. He said, but he passed away 2 days before this picture was taken. So he was kind of confused and I guess wanting answers. And I didn't have a lot to give him, but I said, well, he asked me to share it, so I shared it.
Yeah.
See,
Well, I
Brendan,
mean,
And there's certainly no way.
that's why I hold Ken in such high regard. I mean, how perceptive of him, because you look at it right there. It looks like a camera that might be on a screened-in porch.
It does. It really does. You're right. I hadn't even considered that, but you're right. it does look like a screen. And that's something. If I can make contact with this gentleman again, I may inquire about that because that's a good eye. I didn't catch that.
Well, I mean, the picture speaks for itself, but something like that, you'd always wonder. It's like, has anything else happened to you? You got this picture, but and sometimes that's not possible. Someone could send me a picture from, Des Moines, Iowa, and it's not like I'm going to jump on a plane and go ask them a question.
Right. Yeah, some people it's one and done. I try to reach out to some people, and in most cases they will reply, but I've had a lot of cases where they haven't, or it's been weeks or months later when I've forgotten about it. So it's kind of you never know. You never know what the response is going to be.
All right, here we go. Right up Ken's alley, one of his favorite things, and we got a couple of them like this. But aliens, Ken.
Aliens. Yeah, this was in, I believe it was in Ohio, maybe around Cleveland. I'm not sure. The story behind it. This come from a guy's security cameras again. He's a retired police officer. He went outside this night to take his garbage out or do some kind of chore, and something startled him. I'm not sure what it was. The lady was trying to find out. I think it was some noise. Yes. And he ran back in and actually got his gun and fired at this thing. But to my knowledge, he did not hit it or wound it or anyway. But he caught this thing outside of his building, and he had no explanation of what it could be.
That thing looks 10 feet tall, Ken.
Oh, kind of hard to judge. What is that on the right-hand side? Is that a
garage?
It's like a garage, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, it depends on perspective how close that entity there is to the camera.
Right. Well, the actual I sent the full version of it where you can see it standing in the background. It's that's zoomed in. So if we get to that picture, I'll try to point it out to you where you can see it from a distance.
Yeah.
Well, his reaction is what you'd expect from somebody who doesn't understand something, especially somebody in law enforcement went and got his gun, that's kind of almost reminds me of like, and about this, the Hopkinton, Kentucky story.
Absolutely, yes.
With
that
aliens, that it looks the same as a lot of the artist renditions of what those folks saw that night.
Right. And the lady who sent this to me was actually I have been back in contact with her. She's trying to find out some more details because one of her friends that she grew up with came to visit her, and it's actually her dad, her friend's dad this happened to. So she was trying to get some more information. And when she does, if I find out anything good, I'll let you guys know.
100 questions for that. Going back to the first one, you'd love to be able to talk to those people. Have you seen anything in the sky? Has there been anything beyond the photos? Like I say, speaks for itself, but there's got to be a story there somewhere.
Right.
And it's not the only image captured in that picture, which we'll get to here in just a second. Let's take a look at this one now. This one is mind-blowing to me. Give us this story, Brendan.
This lady sent this to me. She said, I think it was shortly after her mother passed away. And she sent me a before and after picture. And I don't remember if it was the picture. She took 2 or 3 consecutive pictures, and there was nothing in the other ones. But she said this looks like her mother. I think especially when her mother was younger. She said it looks just like her mom. But you can clearly see the eyes, the eyebrows, the bridge of the nose.
Oh, yeah.
It's a face, clearly a face.
You get something like this, Ken, you start thinking Photoshop, things of that sort, correct?
It all depends on the age of the picture.
Right.
I mean, my first inclination would be, number one, why did you choose to snap this picture? Was it something that you saw visibly? Because immediately, when you take a picture into a light source like that, it can do weird things. But I mean, that would be my only question. Tell me what possessed you to take a shot of a ceiling fan. But clearly, I mean, I could make out eyebrows, eyes.
Light eyes.
Right.
Yeah,
And she did tell me there was a reason she took the picture. I don't remember. I literally have thousands of emails people send me. I'd have to go back and find hers,
of
but
course.
she either seen something or kept something drew her attention to the ceiling fan. And so she said she felt compelled to take a picture or a few pictures. And I think it was either two or three pictures she took. And this was the only one with the face in it. And she said it looked just like her mom. So
Brendan, how long have you been an investigator now?
I've been investigating the paranormal for about 25 years.
Okay, same as me,
About the
pretty
same
much.
time I started in law enforcement.
Right. Okay. I'm sitting there going, I think I feel some sort of chemistry between you and Ken for future endeavors where, you may say, hey, Ken, I've got this. I'm not sure. See what you think. And
Hey,
Ken
absolutely. The more eyes, the better. And
take
I'm
it.
Well,
sure I
and
have shared pictures that people can't
the,
explain.
yeah, the thing that's interesting about it is, it's such a random picture of a random object.
Right,
Because you see people take pictures of their coffee table to see something move, and it's like, why are you
right.
taking a picture of your coffee table? I could see if
Exactly.
it was on one side of the photo or the other, and it wasn't the actual subject of the photo.
Right,
So that's
right,
why I asked what,
right,
and you explained it.
right,
Something
right.
drew her attention to it. Okay.
And that's one thing that I often will look at too. Like the lady who sent this to me was an older lady, not extremely old, but I'm guessing 50-ish, give or take. And I this is stereotyping, and I shouldn't do that. But I guess it's just where my brain works in law enforcement. I question everything, and my first question was, she didn't seem like the lady who was tech savvy enough to do Photoshop. So I
Right.
always consider things like that. A younger person, 18, 20, very tech savvy, more likely to do
I
it. But
couldn't
a
do it. I
middle
wouldn't know
aged
how to do it.
lady, yeah, I couldn't do it. I mean, that's way above my pay grade. So
All right. Now we talked about this photo, Ken, and this is again just part of a larger shot. And I wanted to really draw back with the camera, get a wider lens. And if
yeah,
you look way off in the distance, you can see that garage and you can see the entity
Yeah.
that's right
right,
next to it. But look what's in the foreground. And
right,
that was the first thing that I noticed and was just kind of blown away by it.
right. Me too. And that's the thing they pointed out to me first, also too. That's what I seen. And the next day after this retired officer had this encounter, he called his son to come to his house to review the footage with him because when he seen this stuff, I guess he just like, tell me, do you see this too? Or what is this? Can we explain this? And they had no logical answer.
All right, another question. You said that this was a security camera. Was this a motion censored camera that takes one shot, or is it part of a video?
That I don't know. That's one of the things this lady was supposed to be finding out for me.
Excellent.
Yeah,
Excellent.
that's one of the questions I asked, and she's supposed to get back with me with that.
Excellent. Good question. It's the right question.
Right.
This one kind of threw me because as I was going over these pictures with Brendan, I brought something to his attention, and he in turn brought something to my attention. I don't know if this is a selfie or somebody took the picture, but there's a lot that's going on here. Can you tell us the story behind this one, Brendan?
Yeah. The person who submitted this didn't give me a lot of information, but the one thing that you had initially pointed out on the right side of the lady, there looks to be like her, yes, right there, like a reflection of an arm or an elbow that shouldn't be there. That's one thing. But the thing that stands out to me is just left of the circle, this thing, which looks more reptilian. You can notice the long teeth, the huge black eye, and a snout looking thing.
Excuse me,
for a
I'm
nose.
sorry, but honestly, from this angle, it looks like a velociraptor. Look at those teeth.
Yeah, it does. It really does. That's the thing that blew my mind the most because and the lady who sent it to me, she's like, "Oh my God, what is this?" She didn't give me a lot of information, but she was freaked out by it.
Mm-hmm.
Can you do a
So
lot of scrutiny on all different types of evidence? Are there programs to clear something like this up, or it's just outside of the purview of technology right now?
No, I mean, there are programs that would do as well as you can to clean them up, but, those are really high end type of programs that, federal agencies might use. I mean, the only, the question that I have, and it's not to, um, dismiss this, but I'm always curious, with photographs, it's like, is this done with a digital camera, 35 millimeter?
right,
What did you take it with?
right,
Because on one hand, you have a negative, and on the
right.
other hand, even with digital, you have something called EXIF, which will give you, more data as far as the camera and stuff that's used for it.
Right. Well, just looking at this picture, it doesn't look like a high quality camera. Just
Mm-mm.
based off the blur, and which I know lighting can contribute to a lot of that. But
Yeah. Well,
yeah,
I
this is one that it, I wasn't sure about because I tried to debunk this and think of what could this thing be,
mhm.
and like I said, I'm sure. I mean, I know there are people out there and programs out there that could probably do this, but not any that I know of. But
Yeah.
Yeah.
anything's possible.
Well,
I mean,
the
typically it's a very slow shutter speed.
Right.
You know what
yeah,
I
and the
mean? But
camera, it's indicated by looking at the looks like a bathroom counter is blurred. Tells you that the camera was in motion when this shot was taken.
Right.
yeah, yeah.
Exactly.
So,
And those two things don't mix. But
No.
I mean, you don't expect everybody, Brandon's going to take a shot to be like a photography
Exactly.
bloody expert. You know what
Right.
I mean? So,
Right.
folks are doing the best that they can. We can just, it's not a question of the legitimacy. The first thing that comes to my mind, and it's probably going to be the case, all of these is like, I wish I knew more about it. I'm sure you
Right.
feel the same
Right.
way.
Exactly.
I wish I knew more about it. Yeah.
Right.
did you
Absolutely.
did you explore that further, Brendan? Especially due to the fact that there was something that certainly looks like a diabolic. Was there correspondence afterwards and them telling you anything going on in the home? Did they give you any more info other than what you see here?
Not much, and I tried to reach back out to get more information, and unfortunately, this is one of the cases where they didn't respond. But
Hmm.
all I can remember, I've had this picture for a little while, was that she was getting ready to go somewhere and was trying to take a selfie. And when she was going through her pictures, she found this and she was pretty freaked out about it, or at least appeared to be. And that's one thing that goes back to as we talked earlier. You know, this could be absolutely 100% authentic, it could be a complete hoax. And that's where we like that tangible evidence. Yeah, we can look at it through a scope of science or whatever to prove or disprove.
Yeah.
And then sometimes you just, what I do is I try to use the experience I have as a paranormal investigator, a law enforcement officer, and and I base it off the demeanor of the people. Does this seem like someone who seems authentic? Because you can tell in a lot of cases when people are being genuine and when they're not. And so I will add that to the credibility or lack thereof in a lot of cases.
Yeah. Well, we
I don't
talked.
share. I don't share every story. I don't share every picture I get because in
Yeah.
some cases I can discredit some of them pretty quickly.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, and we talked about it before. Credibility isn't necessarily based on misunderstanding or
Right.
misinterpreting. Can you show the full picture again, George E1? All right. So a selfie, is she taking it in a mirror?
I think so. I couldn't
Yeah.
find. Tried to find the email. I think so, but I'm not 100%
Yeah.
certain on that. And
Yeah.
she didn't
So
give
if
me a
it's
lot of, a
yeah,
lot of.
if it's a cell, reflective surfaces can
Right.
yeah, they can
Right.
mess you up.
Exactly.
Yeah. Um, this one comes straight out of a horror film, as far as I'm concerned. And at first, it looks as benevolent as anything else you would see out there.
Right.
And this is, I guess, it would be. Is it a Halloween event?
This was trick or treat night in Springfield, Ohio. Not Halloween. That's why the lady was very specific. They had trick or treat night. I think it was like October the 26th or 27th, prior to Halloween. And the lady who took this picture was an older lady, probably in her 60s at least. These two little girls stopped by her house trick or treat, and she was amazed by their costumes because they were homemade. I guess the parents maybe had made them. And she was into sewing and making stuff like that. So she wanted a picture. So she just had these little girls pose in her yard and she took a picture. A few days later, as she was going back looking through them, she wanted to zoom in and try to look, how they were made. And that's when she discovered the thing standing behind the little girl in blue. Yes. And she was completely terrified because she said there was absolutely no one else around when this picture was taken. She said it wasn't a Halloween prop, a decoration, and she said there was absolutely no one else in her yard when she took this picture.
Well,
That looks
then,
like the Terrifier.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean,
This
if the woman said there was nobody else around, then that's what you have to work with
right, exactly,
because we're
and
not
that's
there.
why people comment. This video done really well on TikTok. This picture did. Everyone kept saying, it's someone in a mask, and I get why they would say that, and I can't prove that it isn't. I have to go on what these people told me, and I use how genuine they seem to me, and base my opinion on that. Yeah, it looks like art.
That's
Yeah,
crazy.
it is.
And it's
One
not
thing,
big. If that's a child, so we're not talking more than a little bit over 5 feet tall, this thing,
right,
unless it's bending over.
right. Yeah, and if you look above its head and kind of on its forehead, people pointed out there's something. It almost seems like it's floating or hovering over its head. I don't. It could be something totally unrelated. I don't know. But several people did point that out. Also, I don't know what that might be. But I found this one because these people seem very genuine. It was, like I said, an older lady with no reason to. She wanted to remain anonymous. She wasn't looking for fame or fortune or notoriety. She just was freaked out by it.
Well, some
And
people don't live by these words, but nonetheless, sometimes you got to say, "Hey, I wasn't there."
Right.
Now, the easiest thing in the world is to say, "Oh, it's somebody in a mask. It's Halloween. All signs point to that." Yeah, okay, a little common sense will tell you
Right.
that. But again, you know, you're not there. And if this, lovely woman says, "Hey, there was nobody else, just these two little girls," and hey, you
Yeah.
know what? Then that's what you got to work on.
Exactly. Right.
yeah, and again, you can understand why the happy faces are in place to protect the identity of the children
Right.
in any event going on social media. So that's a good thing.
Right.
What I don't understand is why they have a trick or treat night 5 days before Halloween. So they're going out for double candy. These people are genius.
Yeah. Yeah. I think so. Well, they actually do that sometimes here where I live, depending on what day Halloween actually
Right.
falls on. They will
Weekend.
do it on a weekend prior to or whatever. But either way, these folks seem very genuine. They wasn't looking for notoriety or they were just freaked out, and I understandably so because if I caught that in a picture and I knew there was no one there, that's pretty freaky. That's scary.
It
Yeah,
scares shit out of you.
I think
Yeah.
that a good portion of why you've been so busy and these emails are coming in again is the advent of this and
Absolutely.
people having this available all the time to take pictures. Whereas
Absolutely.
before, if you didn't have a 35 millimeter camera out or your Polaroid camera or whatever else,
Right.
you were out of luck.
Right.
Um,
Which,
this,
I will also say, for TikTok purposes, it's good when people debate. That every comment that I get, negative or not, that pushes the virality of the video. So,
sure,
anytime you post a video like that, there's always debate. Some people are diehard, it's paranormal, and you got some people that's someone in a costume. You'll never convince me otherwise. And that's good. That's what it's about. Everybody has their own opinions, and take from it whatever you will.
Well, one of the benefits, Brandon, is that once you get a following or you get known, then people will trust you. It's just kind of like, hey, I'm going to show you something that I haven't even shown people at work or whatever, because they're going to think I'm making it up. But I'm going to show it to
Right.
you.
Right.
So you get more opportunities to see something that could be amazing. You follow what I'm
Right.
saying? It could be 1 out of 100. But if it
Right.
wasn't for that one, then somebody's going to miss something out there that's really good photographic evidence. It
Exactly.
could be 1 out of 500. Nonetheless,
Right.
you get that opportunity.
Right. Yeah. And to be honest, the majority of people want to remain anonymous. I will have the few who will ask me to tag them in the video just for the sake of, they say, I want to know what everybody else thinks too.
Yeah.
So, if they ask me to do that, I absolutely will. Or if they want to remain anonymous, I, I never mention their name.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's just kind of become a voice for people who don't want to be on camera, who have a story to tell or a picture to share. And so, I take, I don't take that lightly. I appreciate them trusting me with
Exactly.
what they have to do. You know,
that's it's an interesting parallel for what Ken still does with residential cases with his team and what I used to do with residential cases. And I wonder how many of those emails start off with, "You're probably going to think I'm crazy," or "I think I'm crazy."
the majority,
Yeah,
vast majority. Yeah,
so that's
definitely.
interesting. This one
I chase
here,
I chase ghosts, so why would I think you're crazy?
That's what I tell them. Yeah, like you don't have to convince me. If you're crazy, I am too. So we're in it together.
Let's just do this.
Right.
Brendan, what's the story behind this one, sir?
This one comes out of Pennsylvania. The lady who sent it to me, she and her husband were just spending the day with friends on ATVs, side by sides, and they had stopped to take a little lunch break or just a bathroom break or something. And she was just taking the picture of the ATV. She did not see what was sitting in the driver's seat until she got home later, going through her pictures. And if you'll look, there appears to be a humanoid type figure sitting there in the driver's seat.
Hmm.
Tiny, I would
Yeah,
describe it as a little old lady.
yeah, it does look that way. It absolutely does. But this was somewhere. She did tell me the location, but I forgot. It was definitely in Pennsylvania though. Um, just on a ride with her husband, and this thing, whatever it is, decided it wanted to get in the driver's seat for a moment.
Well, here's the thing that sticks out to me. Everything is vivid because nothing's in motion.
Right, right,
Okay, that poor guy obviously got hung up there. His undercarriage is,
right, right,
but the figure, because it's blurry, it seems to be in motion. If it's not a pixelization issue, there
right.
seems to be enough light there that the camera's not going to search for light. But everything else is stationary. That seems to be in motion.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah. That was I thought the same things. It's like I said, there's always these few like that. Some of them, it's hard to tell. Well, it could be pixelization, it could be a lens flare, this, that, or another. But there's just those ones that always stand out. Like I can't explain it. Maybe somebody can, but I
Yeah.
can't.
Okay, let's visit one of my favorite places uh, to investigate and visit, and one of Ken's favorite places to visit, and that's Gettysburg.
Gettysburg, yes. This
Now, this just looks like a bunch of people in a field, but that's not the case.
that's not the case, according to the lady who submitted it to me. She and her family were in Gettysburg doing the typical sightseeing and whatnot. And she was just snapping random pictures. And after reviewing them sometime later, she noticed this one. And, your first thought would be a reenactment going on. But she said there absolutely was no reenactment going on when this picture was taken.
Is that one guy shirtless?
I noticed that. I was trying to figure out if it's shirtless or there's some kind of white shirt or skin. I'm not sure what that is.
First question I'd have would, what day of the week was it? Because if it wasn't on a weekend, I doubt seriously if there are people, because it would either have to be reenactors or people who are on the board of some type.
Right.
Because I don't know why you're going to walk through the high grass like that, because I kind of know what we're looking at here.
Right.
Remembering it correctly. I mean, you got the stockades and everything, right? Yeah, again, I mean, I'm just going by the photo itself, which I think is remarkable, but,
Right.
I'm always looking for that follow-up just to make sure.
She, I don't remember if she told me the day. I don't think so. I would have to double check that email, but
yeah,
what I do remember is she said they were just, seeing the sights, taking the touristy things that people do, and she was just snapping random pictures, and she found this one when she was reviewing them later. So yeah, that one was, I thought, pretty, because I know Gettysburg is, known to have a lot of hauntings and people see soldiers and whatnot all the time. So I thought that was pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, this one here, again, really bad pixelation, but there's no question that there is what seems to be a woman and perhaps a second figure entity back there. So, and this person looks like they're doing, again, the selfie, or they felt a presence behind them. Did they give you any backstory on this one, Brendan?
Yes. So the story with this one, and this is something I'm very adamant about on my TikTok because I've had pretty negative experiences myself. This lady was playing with a Ouija board alone in her room one night. And she said she'd done that quite often, but she said this night there was a lot of weird things happening. And she kept just feeling like something or someone was behind her. She was hearing things and just that presence. You just know when something's behind you. So she just turned her phone around to take a picture, and there are two faces. She pointed out you can see what look like two faces behind her, and she was very creeped out. I think this may have ended her Ouija board career.
You think?
Yeah.
One,
I had the incident I had when I was about 13 ended mine, so I can relate. So,
one almost looks witch-like. The one on the left, the one on the right seems to be a skull.
right.
But that would be interesting to talk to you about in the future as well, Brendan, is follow-ups. How many
Right.
times do you have the opportunity to do follow-ups with these um, photographic submitters, people who, extend their information to you, their story to you, and you're
Right.
like, where are they now kind of thing?
Right.
Is that
Well,
something that is developed?
Yeah, that does happen. I have people who will frequently reach out. I actually had a lady reach out to me earlier this week, maybe yesterday. Uh, she had been in contact with me over the past several months about her house was she was experiencing paranormal activity, seeing shadow figures, and she was a Christian, and she reached out to me for advice on what she might could do, and I of course recommend her to be in prayer, to ask God to bless her home, her property, her family. And that worked for quite a while. But recently she said she began seeing things again. And I, talked to her over a few things, and she messaged me back today actually and told me that it seemed to have helped, at least for the time being.
Good for her, good for you.
Yeah. The people do reach out, and when I find a picture like that I find really interesting, I try to dig as much as I can dig. And most people will reach back out, but there are some I never hear from again. So
Being before we get into the next one, being Christian, and obviously when you had interaction with that woman, you counseled her,
right.
kind of administered to her emotions. Have you had to go in the time in the 25 years, quarter of a century you've been doing this, without, getting into specifics, but have you found yourself in a position where you had to clean up somebody else's mess? Um, Another group, maybe, who is not as experienced or not given the right information.
Well, I will say probably the only thing that really stands out in my mind is I don't know that anybody or one group was responsible for this place was already haunted. It's actually I can look out this window and see the building right now. But this has been probably 15 years ago. It's a place to go to investigate a huge building that had an auditorium in it, a huge stage and the catwalks and the seating. And usually we would just go over there and you would always hear and see. It was just kind of an something we done to pass the time, just enough to, nothing crazy happened, but
Sure.
just enough to keep you interested. Well, we had two friends that used to come with us all the time, but they didn't like it. At the time, they were young, probably 16, 17, 18 years old. And those two guys, they're now Kentucky State Troopers, but for whatever reason, every time they would go with us, something would always happen to them. They were affected bad. And they never wanted to be by themselves, or they didn't want to be in the last in the line walking through, or, they wanted to be close. One night, we went in, same thing. The one guy, he was sitting beside me, and he said he began to see what we would think of a devil would look like horns, but it was like smoke. It was just like in front of his face. And the lights were out, and I told him it was just his eyes adjusting, and it would get better. And this went on for about 20 minutes. And he kept saying he's seen this devil face every time he opened his eyes. Kind of forgot about it. About 20 minutes goes by. He gets up and just wanders off in the darkness, pitch black darkness, which was totally out of character for him. But I still didn't think much of it until one of my friends came over. He said, "Go over and stand by Mikey." That was his name. And I was like, "Why?" He's like, "Just go over there." So I get up and he's just standing opposite side of the room, facing the wall, total darkness. But when you walked upon him, you could feel the temperature change. Like it was cold, super cold. And this was a warm room. And I asked him, I said, "Are you okay?" And he was as nonchalant as he could be. "Oh, yeah, I'm fine." I was like, "Are you sure you're okay? What are you doing?" "Oh, I'm fine." I was like, "Why'd you get up? Or, are you still seeing that face?" I was like, "Yeah, yeah." He said, "Everything's fine." So we kind of pulled him back to the center of the room, shine a light on him, and I'm not joking. And I'm not trying to over exaggerate it like a movie. In the movies when people's eyes turn totally black,
Yeah.
they wasn't totally black, but they were blacker than they should have been. So we set him down on the stage, and I said, "Do you see this face still? Do you see it?" And just as calmly as he could be, "Yeah, it's sitting right here beside him," just like it was his best friend, which totally out of character.
Mm.
And in that moment, we knew we got him. We began praying over him. We got him outside. And when we got him outside and began praying, it's like he snapped out of it and he was freaked out. Like he did not, the last thing he remembered was sitting on the stage beside of me. And this, mind you, was probably 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. He didn't leave until it got daylight. And that morning, because it was a Sunday morning, he went straight to church. He Something latched a hold of him that night, unlike anything. I'm not saying he was possessed, but something
Mm.
was attached to him. That's the closest I've seen to like a possession. And why him, I don't know, but that's one of the scariest things I've ever encountered in my life.
Just thinking that now he is a state trooper. I
Yes.
wonder if he takes the night shifts.
Well, he's a sergeant now. He's moved up through the ranks, but he's done some night shifts. He's a great guy, and but that's one thing I'm sure he'll never forget, and I'll never forget it either.
I was going to say I got two nephews on the same town police force,
Mhm.
and I was going to say, you know, they're new. You get what you get. There's no
Oh, yeah.
night shift, day shift.
Absolutely.
Floating shifts, my friend.
Absolutely.
I got a few more here. This one here, I really wanted Ken to see. It's quite fascinating, and I look at the picture, and it's a good camera,
Yeah.
and there's no motion blur, anything of that sort. There's two guys hanging out, having a couple of beers around a bonfire.
Yep.
They've got their motor home there with them, and what looks to be either stepping out of the motor home or walking past it
Yep.
is a third entity, and everything about it is creepy.
Yeah.
Well, you can see the decal right through them.
Right. Yeah. This one comes out of, I believe it was Indiana. And I can't remember the name of the lake. It's something like Lake Pataki or something like that. I'm sure that's not right. But yeah, there was these, I think, three couples maybe went up for the weekend to camp out, spent some time together, and they were just taking pictures. And they noticed this guy, thing, whatever it is, either walking out of or walking by their camper. And it almost looks like it's got a trail behind it if you look.
Yeah.
Right.
Almost like it's coming out of the trailer, maybe.
Well, the thing with this one too is if we go to the full picture, you got a campfire going there.
Right.
And if you're going to talk about motion, right?
Right.
The flames are a pretty good job of freezing those flames in place,
Right.
right? And
Right.
everything else looks pretty copacetic. So one of two things here is either put in post editing
Right.
or there's a transparent guy walking
Right.
around the camper, you know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, and then again, this lady was, not an older lady, probably close 40s, 50 at most, and she wanted to remain completely anonymous. She's like, I don't want my name associated with this. I've only showed it to a few of my close friends, but she said I thought you would enjoy it, and people on your TikTok follow you would enjoy it. She had no explanation, so
It
Right.
it bodes the question, though. Again, and it's hard with the onslaught of emails that you receive to dig deeply into each and every one of these cases that come in, but
right,
then to wonder whether or not this individual died in that area,
right,
you know,
yeah,
or
yeah,
is this vehicle a vehicle that was in an accident prior to the purchase by the current owners? Things of that sort that just fascinate me to find out the history behind.
right, yeah. And I wish I do have that email, and it's got the exact location. I'll have to dig that up, but it was just a casual weekend with friends, or what they thought would be a casual weekend, until they reviewed their pictures and found out they had an unexpected visitor or guest.
Yeah, that's
Yeah. Well,
incredible.
you
Yeah,
got to bear in mind that, when people say those things, they either had somebody do it for them or else, not all of us are Einsteins
Right,
with software and editing. And
right,
I mean, we're proficient enough, but it's not like, if you look behind me, it's like I've got all this video equipment,
right.
nope,
Yeah.
just the panel wall.
And it's and again, it kind of goes back to I have some people who will send me a story or a picture, which in a lot of cases it really isn't that interesting, but they will message me every day, hey, or when are you going to share that picture, when are you going to share my story, be sure to tag me when you do. And then you have people like this who say, you better not mention my name, I don't want anyone to know who I am. People will think I'm crazy. Here it is. Share it if you want to. That's the ones I look at and like, okay, well, obviously they're not doing it for notoriety or for their name to be in the spotlight or whatever. They're just caught something cool and they want to share it.
Well, the sad part, Brandon, too, we talk about this a lot, how one hoax can undo 1,000 great things
Exactly.
because, you get more pessimistic that way.
Right.
And that's the sad part about it. We live in an age right now where kids that are 13, 14 years old are amazing
Right.
with Photoshop and everything like that. That's the generation they've grown up in.
Right.
But, people that have these things, like I say, they're not geniuses that are doing this thing. Misidentify is fine.
Right.
But it's difficult in this day and age because there's so much baloney being put out there that, you're always afraid of missing that one thing. Like, it's another one, and so,
Yeah.
I mean, it does bear some scrutiny when people send you stuff. I mean, it's just not just, oh, hey, I'm gonna look at this. Maybe this is the one.
Right. Yeah. And I'll tell this on myself. It's embarrassing, but I'll tell it. Um, it wasn't long. Well, I had probably had quite a few followers at the time, but I had received a story one night. This guy was telling me about this cryptid that was very uh, prominent in the area where he lived. It was not a lot of people knew about it, and I thought, well, that's kind of interesting. I was on a cryptid kick at the time, and I started to share the story. I actually made a video, and about 10 seconds after I posted it, it hit me because I knew I had heard of this cryptid, but I wasn't sure where until I realized it's something on South Park, Man Bear Pig. And I was like, oh my God, I did not just fall for I posted about something on South Park. So, immediately I go and delete it. But I knew I had heard about it, but I couldn't remember where because I hear so many stories and I read so many articles, and I thought it was weird, but then it just dawned on me, Man Bear Pig. I was like, that's on South Park. I was like, oh my God, I'm an idiot. So, I immediately go and delete it. And
Take the photo down.
yeah, exactly. And yeah, that was an embarrassing. I'll tell that on myself. I got a little too hasty that night.
That's all right. If we can't laugh at ourselves, what do we got?
Exactly. Absolutely.
Brendan, these last two photos that you sent, I didn't do any type of editing or zoom ins or anything. They're pretty self-explanatory, but I'm curious about the stories behind both. Let's start with this one here.
This one comes out of I forgot the name of the little town. It's right outside of Atlanta, Georgia.
Mm-mm.
And the story around this picture is quite interesting. This lady said her now ex-husband, then husband, and kids moved into this house in this little town, which I wish I could remember the name of it because I had so many people reach out afterwards talking about how haunted this town was. But anyway, they move into this house, and immediately things started happening. The children began having these friends that came out of their closet, other children. They didn't like the parents. They wanted them to hurt the parents, and poltergeist activity. Things would fly off the wall, and it was like nasty, nasty stuff going on. And this picture, I actually have the full picture, but her kids and ex-husband are in it. And she didn't want her kids on TikTok, which I understand that. She asked it when it's in the full picture, it looks even more. It looks better. So you can see her ex-husband's knee and arm. But there's this entity sitting on the couch. They were just taking a photo. The kids are on the other side of his lap. She took this photo, and you can clearly see. This one gets a lot of debate. Some people see a female spirit, and some see a male. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, this home, she said that she eventually couldn't stand it any longer. She moved out. She and her husband divorced shortly thereafter. But to my knowledge, her ex-husband still lives there.
What I find fascinating is when you first look at it, you think it is an old black and white photo,
Right.
but then you see the blue jeans and looks like a tan long sleeve shirt that the husband is wearing.
Right.
Yet the apparition is black and white,
Exactly.
Gray grayscale. Yeah.
grayscale.
Yeah, definitely. And like I said, in the entire picture, the original picture, it stands out even clearer when you can see it in contrast next to these people. But still, I thought that one was an amazing picture. That one got a lot of attention on TikTok and a lot of debate back and forth. You know, you always have the naysayers, regardless how good or bad the evidence is. But
Well, it's the easiest thing in the world.
yeah, absolutely.
That's fake. That's fake. That's
Oh
fake.
yeah,
That's
definitely.
fake.
And maybe it is. I can't prove that it isn't, but on the logical side of it, I can't disprove it either. You know, I don't. It looks pretty legit to me. You know.
Yeah. I mean, without the bigger picture, it's like I'm looking at it like it's for what it's worth.
Right.
For
Exactly.
what it's worth.
Exactly.
Yep.
All right, our final picture that you sent us, Brendan, and this one's a doozy also. I'd love to hear the backstory.
Yeah. So this one, I think, was in Canada. The lady who took this, it was just before Christmas. She was staying with her older daughter and her family at their house just before Christmas. There was a huge snowstorm going on outside. I remember that. And this is her younger daughter asleep on the couch. If
Jesus.
you notice, and she didn't see this thing. She was just taking a picture of, I guess, the Christmas tree and the lights. And but she also noted that just before this, the family dog had got up and went and laid in front of the couch, or maybe it was right after the picture, I guess, like it was trying to protect the younger daughter. But you know, you can clearly see what I believe to be a full body apparition. It's you can't tell much about the head; it kind of dissipates up top, but you know you can see the stride between the legs, the foot, the pants. It's creepy. I don't know what it is, but it's creepy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's kind of either disformed at the top, or as we've heard, and I'm sure again, um talking about the side of this, that they cannot manifest a full
Oh, right,
physical form.
right.
And so the head is missing off of this thing. That's terrifying. Could you imagine if this lady woke up and
Yes,
saw
exactly.
this thing?
Right. Yeah, exactly. And that goes back to we, according to the Bible, are made in the image of God, so these things can't fully manifest. Something's always going to be wrong. Maybe their head's gone, maybe a arm or a leg's gone, but something's always off. And if when it's these demonic entities, and that would make sense. But demonic or not, whatever it is, like you said, if I woke up and this thing was standing there, I'd be making tracks. So it's a creepy one, whatever it is.
Hmm.
It's so amazing to me how much literally is out there, and that there is not a database or an outlet for these individuals, these people who they'll share it, online, maybe with friends.
Right.
They'll send it to them in an email, but they're not really getting the exposure that it deserves. And then here you come along, and they're just so open about this.
Right.
Um, it's a testimony to how you handle each and every one of these cases. And again, some of your videos on TikTok run 3 to 5 minutes, telling the story, giving the background information on this. And realistically, let me tell everybody who's watching this, we have not even scratched the surface. I'm only speculating as I scroll through your page on TikTok, Brennan. You've got to have 300 different video stories out there at least. I don't know if you even know how many you have there, but
I think
there's a
it's
lot.
closer to 1,000, probably.
Closer to 1,000. My God!
Yeah.
But
Yeah. I don't
it's
know the exact number, but I'm guessing somewhere around that 1,000.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I've
You
even
recently
got some TikToks as long as 12 minutes.
wow,
Um,
and you covered werewolves recently too, I think, on one
I
of them.
have.
So there's
I've actually got one I haven't shared yet, and I'm not convinced. I have a theory on it's a video a lady sent me from her front porch. she called it a werewolf. I don't know. I can't say it's a werewolf. It's either one of the creepiest videos I've seen in a while, or it's not. I have a theory on what it might be. It could be explainable, but I don't know. It's something. It looks like running down the road in front of her house, leaping like a werewolf. We think a werewolf would. But I also have a theory on what it might be that could be explained. I haven't shared that one yet. I may share that one this coming week. When I first seen it, I was blown away. I was like, "Oh my God, I have to do this one tomorrow." But then I looked at it more, and I'm like, "That could be something else." So I let people decide. I'm going to show it. This lady says it's this, but I think it could be something else. Tell me what you see. And I'm not going to tell people what I think it might be, because you don't want to give people ideas. You say it, then oh yeah, I see that too. So.
It's like an EVP. Same thing as an EVP.
I like the idea of, I don't know about a database, but I would love to see a landing spot for people who send pictures in.
Yeah.
My caveat would be, look, I'm not telling you I'm the final word in anything.
Right.
But if I do tell you in a civil way that, look, this is probably dust, it's probably pollen, or this is, if I tell, because a lot of times people will say, what do you think? And God forbid I tell them well, you weren't there.
Right.
So but how about and I'm like, you asked me a question.
Yeah.
But the problem I see with that, I mean, let's face it, we live in an outrage culture right now.
Yeah.
So being civil and saying, okay, this is what I'm seeing, in my opinion,
exactly.
Where the next person who comments will say, it's fake. Yeah. And then get into a character assassination.
Right.
Of this person that they're not worthy of life, So it's tricky both ways, but
yeah,
I'd love to see a place where people could, what do you think?
Right.
I caught this thing. Here's my story.
Yeah.
I know that I'd be on board for that.
Oh, absolutely. Me too. And, one of the most common things I see, especially with like security cameras, and in the beginning, I didn't catch it myself, but spider webs. You see a spider web in front of it. It looks like a orb or some kind of
wisp. Yeah.
Yeah, something, and oh my God, I caught a ghost.
Yeah,
you got a spider web. But I don't try to hurt people's feelings. I just thanks for sharing it with me. Have a great day. But some of it I don't know. Like the video I was talking about, the werewolf. It's either one of the creepiest videos I've seen in a while, or it's the other thing. One of the other, and I don't know. And because the way that it's lined up, it could go either way. So I'm gonna let people, make their own judgment. I'm not going to put ideas.
I'm on that.
Yeah,
I'm on that. I got to see that.
Well, I'm following you, so I'm looking forward to it. Adding to your already vast list. And with all that going on, and with your popularity, it really, on behalf of Ken and myself, it really means a lot that you took the time to come and join us on Dead Air and talk about some of these experiences. And I know there's a lot more there. So, down the line, we're going to bug you again.
Hey, guys, I'm consider it a blessing for you guys to ask me to be here. I enjoy it, and I'll be more than happy to come back anytime.
Thank you so much for joining us, sir.
Thank you, guys.
I see her rolling up, Uber black Cadillac, high heel boots and a sexy body full of tats. Baby's bad, oh baby's hella bad. After her there ain't no coming back. Wanna take a run at that. I think she's feeling me, turn it up a few degrees. My imagination of her body gets the best of me. Oh gosh, she's such a tease, bitten lips,